Mending Wall by Robert Frost, our third poem in our series on Robert Frost and discovery. So, breaking down this particular one, when talking about this poem, I'm always intrigued by this title, Mending Wall, the ing suffix giving it a present tense, and it being fragmentary. It is not really a full sentence. It really should be like, we are mending a wall, I am mending a wall, I'm going out to mend a wall. But it's just mending wall. And then we arrive at that moment of action. We're out, we learn pretty quickly we're somewhere out in nature. And we get this disarming opening phrase when we get to the whole thing. But if we look at it holistically, it, again, like after apple picking, doesn't really have a structure in the way that you would expect traditional poetry to, in terms of quatrains or stanzas or broken into specific rhythm or rhyme schemes. It more or less plays on like a kind of stream of consciousness. It's an idea followed by an idea followed by an idea. And this is something that Frost in style was becoming reasonably well known for. But let's look at this opening, very unusual opening. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen groundswell under it and spills the upper boulders in the sun and makes gaps even two can pass abreast. Something there is, and we'll return to that something later on, but it's interesting that Frost refers to this something that doesn't love a wall. And in that way, it is everything, be it nature, be it people, be it whatever it is. There is something out there that doesn't love a wall. The idea of placing a boundary in an area where a boundary shouldn't be is what Frost is really getting at here. If we're putting up this boundary, it clearly is an unnatural sort of thing, and there's something that doesn't love a wall. Either the frozen ground swells the wall and breaks it, or the top of it falls down, or it makes gaps where two people can walk through. And if two people can walk through a gap, then the wall is rendered useless. If a wall has a gap, it's no longer a wall, it's a gate. And the something that there is referring to the natural state of things. He then refers to the fact that there are people who can change the world. The work of hunters is another thing. I've come after them and made repair where they have left not one stone on a stone, but they would have the rabbit out of hiding to please the yelping dogs. The gaps, I mean, no one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring, mending time, we find them there. So he suggests, of course, that throughout the year, the hunters have come along and dismantled the wall in order to actually get at the rabbits that they are hunting. But what he's talking about, he says, the gaps, I mean. And this is where you get the idea that he's kind of like in this stream of consciousness. He goes back, the persona goes back to, this is what I actually mean. This is what I'm talking about. The gaps in the wall is interesting. We don't see them being made. We don't hear them being made. But when we come to mend the wall every spring, there's gaps. How do they get there? The wall's natural state must therefore be in disrepair. When we put it into repair, this is its unnatural state. So the other thing we get is that the spring mending time, it's a named thing. It's nominated. Nominated meaning a noun. It's given a moment. So if it happens every year, it is therefore, this wall is an annual event building this thing. And it's an annual event to repair this thing. This is a common thing that's happening in Frost Persona's world. We find them there. Now that is obviously the persona and this neighbour, who we don't meet, but we hear from twice. Beyond the hill, a distant neighbour. A neighbour that is, of course, an outsider, someone who Frost doesn't communicate with. He's beyond the hill, a foreigner, a different. And on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again, to set our distance once again, we keep the wall between us as we go. We know our place. We know our separate sides. They're obviously not compatriots, friends, or colleagues. To each, the boulders that have fallen to each, and some are loaves and some so nearly balls, we have to use a spell to make them balance. Okay, so the wall's obviously quite higgledy-piggledy. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. Both of them speaking to the wall. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Again, like the apple or the ladder in the apple picking, the transference of mankind onto nature causes a scar, causes damage, causes a physical change in the self. Physical difference, which is an interesting insight into what Frost is actually talking about here. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game, one on one side. It comes to a little more that where it is, we do not need the wall. Now, this is Frost's persona, thinking, actually, we don't need this. There are natural barriers anyway. But as a farmer would say, well, you need a wall because you need to keep the cows in, or you don't want cross-contamination. And that's exactly what he mentions here. It comes to a little more that this is where we do not need the wall. He is all pine and I am all apple. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines. This is not going to happen. We have a natural straight barrier. We also have that metaphoric idea that I am the work that I represent. I am my farm. Interesting sort of insight there. And I tell him here, and he says, good fences make good neighbours. An aphorism, or indeed is it an aphorism? If we look here, a terse saying expressing a general truth or principle, or it can be an astute observation, a bit of both. And so good fences make good neighbours has been used outside of the poem's actual own history. It's been quoted as a truth, as a good thing, and it's been quoted obviously in the ironic sense. Could be both in this one. Okay, spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. So the persona decides, I'm going to actually make him discover something new here. And the interesting thing is the neighbour has shut down. He's refusing any idea of discovery or new ways or evocative ways. And the persona is going provoke. Okay, which is what a poet's trying to do. It's what poets do, essentially. So it's interesting. Why do they make good neighbours? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. So there's no animals to keep in. So why? We get an emphasis on why. Why then? What are you talking about? Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, to whom I was like to give offence. Because if I do wall someone in or wall someone out, I create a barrier. I say, you are separate to me, you are different to me, you are over there, I am over here. It is going to be offensive at some point. You are going to say, you are different. And if you are different to me, you cannot be my friend, my colleague, my compatriot. There must be a wall between us. But something there is that doesn't love a wall. We get a repetition of a line. There it is there. Something there is that doesn't love a wall. Is that one of those again? Is Frost's persona trying to create an aphorism? There is something out there, something in nature doesn't love a wall. Nature abhors a wall. Nature abhors a vacuum. Nature abhors a wall. Is that the suggestion? It might be. I could say elves to him, magical creatures, the mystical, the unknown, the miraculous. That's what when we get to nature's transcendence, when the tuft of flowers, all these images that Frost keeps on conjuring up, these are miraculous things. Where do they come from? Why are they there? Why has this person left a tuft of flowers in a mown field? Why am I dreaming of these apples? What's going on in that sense? Elves, miraculous. It's the miracle of nature. But it's not elves exactly. I'd rather he said it for himself. I'd rather he came to the discovery himself. I'd rather I don't have to force a discovery onto these people. I'd rather people come up with their own way of thinking, but they don't. And it's frustrating, the persona. I see him there bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand. Nice simile, like an old stone, savage armed. We get a simile and an image of a person who is living like a Stone Age caveman, Stone Age savage. Savage in the terms of an uneducated person, in the pejorative sense, not in the sense of now we might say something savage as in vicious or wild, but savage in that you don't seem educated or sophisticated or civilized. It is an offensive term in these days. If we were to refer to the language of, say, Cook and all that, who refers to people as savages. It's a very offensive way of thinking. But here he's using the image to remind us that this character doesn't see the idea that something doesn't love a wall, can't move beyond their own inhibited, restrictive thinking. He moves into darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only and the shade of trees. He will not go behind his father's saying. Now we get an insight. He is just repeating somebody, his father's saying. This goes back for years and years and years. This is what we've always done. This is what we've always thought. I will keep thinking it. If we do that, we cease to progress as a society, as a construct, and as an idea. We do not transcend. We do not move into a new way of thinking. And he likes having thought of it so well. He says it again. Good fences make good neighbours. Frost's persona gets nowhere with this. There is a distinct lack of discovery in the neighbour. The insight gained by the persona over the wall of thinking is stopped right there. So this is a frustrated persona in this one. It's a very frustrated character, unable to see movement. He is going behind his father, saying, hiding behind an aphorism, hiding behind a weak point made by someone else, plagiarized, if you will, by someone else. So this poem is almost about the inability of certain characters to achieve any sense of new discovery or new insight when you have so clearly seen it happen. Again, lacking in the ability for you to go, oh, here's some metaphors, here's some similes, here's some personification. Yeah, I understand poetry. This one is again holistic in its imagery and its metaphor. The wall itself is metaphoric for that discovery. It leads the persona into a way of thinking. It changes their consciousness, and he tries to make that a collective issue. It doesn't work in this case, but we, the audience, end up probably on the side of the persona. We end up disagreeing with this. And by doing so, we get transformed, we get changed, we see a new discovery, the audience. And that is the specific way you've got to think in terms of such poetry. That's what Frost was doing. Okay. Again, we have annotated versions of these on the Google Classroom site, done very well by Mrs. Mulligan, so please go to those. I'm doing these videos, she's doing those annotations, and we'll collectively come together and see if we can make everything we know about Frost work. Thank you.